Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
Why attempt something if most people fail? Why put yourself in danger when you can be safe at home? Soukhanthone Siphaxay, known to most as Tron, was in boot camp during the September 11, 2001 attack on America and would soon find himself on the front lines of the war on terror as part of an elite force, the Navy SEALs.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Tron enlisted in the Navy with the purpose of serving his country and was deployed to hotspots around the world, including Iraq, Afghanistan, and the southern Philippines. The Laos-born refugee has been fighting his whole life, but one of his toughest battles would come at the end of his career as he tried to adapt back to life as a civilian.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of C4 Podcast, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. My name is Coach Andetka, and I'm here with my co-host, John Messina. We have an amazing guest today. I'm going to let John introduce him, but I know the podcast, we tend to focus on athletes, and believe me, this individual is, I'm sure would kick a lot of athletes' asses. Man, you know, like I'm a bodybuilder and I trained hard, but I don't think what I did would compare to what this gentleman has done. The physical strength and probably the mental and psychological strength that he had to do to excel in his career choice. So without further ado, I'm going to let my co-host John Messina introduce him.
Yeah, this is exciting. We are going to be interviewing, as far as we know, the first ever Navy SEAL that was born in Laos and came to the U.S. as a refugee and went on to become a Navy SEAL. But before we jump into this amazing interview with Tron here, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to our brothers over at the Now in Session podcast. They started their show in 2022, just like us. So we're kind of going on this journey together with them. Follow their show on Spotify, YouTube, follow them on IG and Facebook. Our brother LL Lucky over there is also a Navy veteran. So this show is dedicated to all the veterans out there. We appreciate what you guys do. So
Definitely.
With that, we're going to go ahead and have Tron introduce himself. Tell us, Tron, tell us your full name and a little bit about your family coming from Laos, etc.
Yeah. So the guys in the teams call me Tron, but my real name is Soukhanthone Siphaxay. I was born in Laos at a time when the war was still going on, but nobody really knew that, you know, Laos was there was still fighting going on. It was like Laos was a covert war, and Vietnam was an overt war, you know. So my dad worked with a 3-letter organization that was, you know, that the Americans were with the American, because the king of Laos was pro-American and the prince of Laos was communist. So the communist Red Army intelligence caught on what my father and my uncle were doing. So they left they left my mom and my 2 older sisters and I, and they went to Thailand to set up, you know, a place for us to stay. So we were bouncing from cemetery to cemetery just to avoid the authorities, the communist authorities. And then once we got to the Mekong River, my dad was there to receive us and take us to Thailand, to a refugee camp before we got sponsored, you know. So then we moved to we started in Thailand, and then we got in process in the Philippines, and then we flew into San Francisco, and this is about like the 1981 timeframe, and then we settled in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Yeah, and then folks split up, you know, and then I grew up in Iowa, out of all the places. And, you know, as a kid, I think sports was like a really good way for me to, control my anger, I would say, and I learned at a really young age how to manage, it's just that control anger, and then, so one of the questions you had asked is like what attracted me to the SEAL teams. I think it was, everything that I did from middle school, junior high, all the sports that I did. I think it just got me. I always knew I was going to get ready to be, for something like that. Because either way, I was going to go in the military. If I was going to go Army, I was going to go SF. If I was going to go to any other branch, I was going to either do their special operations thing. But with the teams, I knew in 5th grade that I wanted to be a SEAL.
Wow.
So, and then I just took some swim lessons. Took some swim lessons at a later age, like 22, and then just, I had to do it. It was one of those journeys that I had to do for myself,
I got to say, what part of Iowa did you grow up on? And the reason I'm asking is we have had like maybe 5 people from Iowa on this podcast.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. We've had Olympic medalists from Tokyo Games. We had a pro football player. We had Linda Sayavongchan, who's, a D1 basketball coach at Indiana. There's something going on out there. Yeah.
So I think it was the Midwest, like hard working, because majority of the people because it's an agricultural state, so I think with Iowa, it's bred in them. So if you look at like Iowa wrestling, Iowa State wrestling, in any sport, it was just the hard work and a dedication. Like it's just part of the culture,
Yeah.
So
Hey, Tron, you mentioned if you can delve into it more, the anger, right? I mean, me growing up as a kid, I came here when I was 4, and like the first thing I dealt with, my family as well, right? But me being a kid, I just dealt with being like bullied in school because I looked different. I dealt with, with the racism and prejudice and all that. And that was the source, like, of my anger, right? And it made me want, well, I'm going to work out now so I can like either defend myself or take care of myself or just something, right? So
right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what was the anger that you were talking about?
So, yeah, I experienced the same thing when, but it was like different though. So, I mean, same thing, but different, kind of like, same, but different. But,
Okay.
So when I lived in Philly, so we lived in Ben Salem. That's where we first started. It was right outside of Philly, for like 3 years. And then my mom and dad were like, they wanted to be around more Lao people because Ben Salem was predominantly white. And then we moved inside Philly, like Logan area, like North Philly. Like it was rough, man. Like, when did you come to the U.S.?
I came in 75, but we landed in the Midwest. We landed in Ohio for a year and then Chicago.
Okay, so you can still remember the fighting, right?
The war, yeah, because my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the war.
Okay, so I remember it was just being, I was like 4 years old, and it was, and I say this because, and I'll get to this, how it just like it was muscle memory, how I remember things. So when I remember being real little, and my aunt or my mom would like, whenever there was like bombing and the fighting that was going on, they just grab me and run to a shelter, right? So when we moved into Philly, it was a war zone, bro. I was fighting every day, before school recess, after school.
Were you like the only Laotian kid in school, the only Asian?
No, they put all the Asian kids in one class. It was like an ESL.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so there was like from Cambodians and there was a couple Lao people. There was like 2 classes. This is inside Philly. There was like 2 classes of just Asian kids from the girls, and they even put the Africans in our class too. The folks that are from from Ethiopia and Kenya.
Oh, okay.
So and everybody got along. It was the locals, you know, like the kids from Philly, like inside Philly, and it was predominantly like 70%. It was like 70-80% black in North Philly, and then you know just a small amount of Asians, Puerto Ricans, but they put all the non-blacks in one class. So then, so we'd be fighting like every day, and it was rough. But I remember when they were fighting, when I could hear, you know, gunshots, you know, gunfire in because the Philadelphia PD and the move people, the Jamaicans, they were like, there was a big on like firefight, and everybody was like, I could, you know, I was just walking down the street and everybody's like cringing down because they just didn't know. But it was like muscle memory where I was like, oh, why are these people? It felt normal, you know. So I didn't cringe down or try to hide. I was just walking, do my own thing, just walking to the the local at like second, third grade, you know.
Wow. Okay.
So, and then, but yeah, you can Google it. I mean, like the Philadelphia PD blew up like a whole block or some shit like that. It was crazy. So, but yeah, I think that was part of the anger of just being different. But I didn't really, you know, I looked at it more like a challenge. You know, like, okay, hey, you know what, you guys want to treat me like this? I wasn't going to give them any, you know, anything else, because then if I worried about it, I would have just given them, you know, more energy for them. They would just take more energy of mine. So I was like, all right, I gotta manage this. So that's, you know. And then when my folks split up, I was just like constantly angry. But then I got into wrestling, and I had this my eighth grade coach. He you know, he saw something in me, and then he was just like, just taught me. It was the first time that I really learned how to control my anger. Because when I went into a match, I was just like just aggressive, you know, and just angry. And then I went to high school, and I tried that same shit, trying to throw some dudes, you know, because I was used to throwing guys, and I won by pins in junior high. But when I got into high school, I wrestled varsity my freshman year. I wrestled varsity. I was 4-year. I wrestled varsity for all 4 years.
Oh,
but
wow.
I tried that shit my freshman year, my first match against a kid who was like a junior, and he was like pretty much a grown ass man, and I couldn't throw him, so I had to actually wrestle, and it was just like, all right, I got to change my tactics.
So is this in Iowa or in Philadelphia?
Yes, yeah, this is in Iowa. Oh yeah, so my folks split up when I was in middle of my third grade year, and we moved to Iowa because my mom's only brother in the U.S. lived there, and he moved to Iowa because his in-laws, so their family was a lot closer than ours. So he's just like, hey, I'm gonna stay. I mean, I'm gonna wherever they go, that's where I'm going. But you know how like how they regionalize you, right? I didn't know this until 2005 when I came back from Iraq the first time. So whenever the U.S. goes to war, they're like, whoever the guys who get first dibs are always the guys who work for the U.S. You know, like your dad was a lieutenant colonel, and he was fighting for Laos, but then they were pro American. So then they're like, okay, well, you're from a city, so we're going to put you in a city. If you're from the country, they're going to put you in a you know, you know what I'm saying? Like, so my cousins, my uncle married a Taidam woman who, like, I love her. She's my favorite aunt. She can speak Lao, but I can't speak or understand Taidam, you know.
There's a lot of Taidam in Iowa.
There is, yeah. So her family is Taidam. She has 13 brothers and sisters, and then with my mom, you know, she had like 4 brothers. One lived in Canada, one lived in Iowa, and then the other 2 lived in Laos. So she only had one. It was an easy choice to move to Iowa. We weren't going to move to Canada because, you know, for immigration purposes. But then I can remember you know, and their family was like, they were really close. So when just growing up and watching their family interact and stuff like that, I really admired that they were like super close. Whereas like, my family, I think we weren't so close. We were more dysfunctional than than close. But it was good. And then I learned how to put that anger into sports. So yeah.
Cool.
So
Cool.
so then you enlisted right after high school, I take it?
No. So I tried other things. I actually I went to after high school. I didn't start early enough in wrestling to I was saying I wasn't good enough to wrestle in college in Iowa. And then I just decided to focus more on Chinese Kung Fu because there was no Muay Thai or anything like that. So I got really close with my Kung Fu teacher. And Pat Miletich, really good dude. He fought out of Iowa, and he was just up and coming. This is like the early 2000s, late 1990s to early 2000s. And I was like, okay, I was really a big UFC fan, so I was like, I asked my Sifu, I was like, I was like, I really want to test my skills. Should I fight? And he's like, he started making me think. He's like, what's the average lifespan of a fighter? I was like, these guys are like 2-3 years. He goes, but didn't you always want to go in the SEAL teams? I was like, yeah, because I didn't know any SEALs. I was like, well, I'm 20, 23, 24, and I thought I was getting too old. And he's like, well, how long's a lifespan of a SEAL? I'm like, well, they can retire. He's like, okay. He goes, think about it. I was like, all right. So, I went to school because I was going to the University of Iowa at the time. I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, you know what? 24 years old. Either Bush just took office. I knew that Bush Senior was he was director of the CIA during the Lao Revolution. I was like, well, we're going to go back to war, and we're going to go soon. So then I was like talking to my Sifu, my Kung Fu teacher, Mr. Sang, and he's like, I was like, I just made a call to the recruiters, and I was like, hey, I want to go in the Navy. I want to be a SEAL. And then I get this like bang on my door, and this guy Jeremy Gillespie, bangs on my door. He goes, "Open the door, motherfucker." Sorry, am I not able to cuss?
No, you're good.
That's good.
So I was like, who the fuck? What kind of Navy recruiter bangs on my door and tells me to open the door, motherfucker? So I open the door, and I'm like, Jeremy? So he had left like, right after high school, and we had played football together. He goes, so you want to be a SEAL, huh? I was like, yeah. He goes, all right. He goes, then he's like, we got to do some tests before we can get you in. And then we go into, and I'm older, right? Than the kid who just came out of high school. So we go to MEPS, we do all this process. I take the swim test, pass everything. So we go to MEPS, and I started being demanding. I was like, hey, I want a bonus. I want a SEAL contract. I want a good, rate. So in the Navy, a rate is like your job, So that I was able to get electrician. I signed to go to BUDS, but at the time you had SEAL source ratings. So you had like 15 different ratings. You can be like a gunner's mate, boatswain's mate, whatever. Just whatever 15 jobs that was like dedicated for that SEAL, that job as a SEAL. Like guys that can weld, guys that can fix things. So I get there, and they're like, yeah, we can get you an electrician. I was like, well, where's the contract that says, the SEAL that's going to give me a guaranteed shot to go to BUDS? And he's like, he goes, I don't know. I was like, okay, get me the contract that says that I'm going to go to BUDS after A school, or I'm walking out this door. And they thought I was full of shit, so I just walked out the door, and some chief runs after me. He's like, whoa. He goes, hey, I was able to get you BUDS. I was able to get you everything that you wanted, and an electrician, if that's okay. I wasn't able to get you any bonus money because you don't have your undergrad. I was like, that's fine. I was like, I'm not in it for the money. I just want to, serve my country where I grew up, be a SEAL and go to war. That's all I want to do. And then they're like, all right, cool. When can you leave Wednesday? I was like, all right, well, so I go to my wife. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. My wife, I get home on a Thursday and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving. She's like, why? Where? I'm like, I'm joining the Navy and I'm going to go be a SEAL. And we'd already been married for 2 years. And she's like, well, when are we going to talk about it? I'm like, we're talking about it now. She's like, okay. She's like, when are you leaving? I'm like, I'm leaving for boot camp on Wednesday. So less than a week. Because the way I looked at it was like, hey, man, I knew that the first golf was so quick that I didn't want to miss out on the second one. So I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And then sure enough, getting to boot camp in August and 9/11 happens. So I got to boot camp August 13th of 2001. And then, 9/11 didn't happen. I wasn't able to see any of the footage until after boot camp, till I got to A school. And I was really, I was upset. At the same time, I was like, okay, like I knew, expectation management. And then, I went to A school and then went straight to Buds. After A school, my A school was like 6 months long. And then I showed up to Buds that like in 2002, and then went through Buds SQT, Army Jump School, cold weather training in Alaska, and then showed up to Soukhanthone 5 in 2003. So the pipeline,
Wow.
I guess there was like 2 years,
So Buds is notorious, right? I mean, frankly, most people that go in don't make it out. Tell
Right.
us a little bit about it. How hard was it? How did you mentally get through this thing and physically?
And
Tell us.
hey, can you tell us the acronym for BUDS as well for our
Sure.
guests?
Yeah, Buds stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. So it's really a selection, so you have first phase, second, and third phase. But even before that, there was like INDOT, and it was like back when I went through, it was 4 weeks long. Now it's like 3 weeks long. But then again, they have Buds Prep now. They didn't have Buds Prep when I went through it. They have, so Buds Prep is like it's like after you're done with boot camp, then you go to like 8 weeks of just building your body up where you're just running every day, you're swimming every day, and then you're lifting every day and just getting strong. Because the reason why Buds Prep was developed was to get guys in the best shape to get ready to try out and go to Buds. Because Buds, you really don't learn anything. They just break you down for like 6 months. They just beat the hell out of you. And it's always and then like, so in doc they just teach you how to, like, hey, this is how you fold your clothes, this is how you, for inspections, because everything is a test there. There was like never a day where there's a test. So they're constantly testing your physically, more mentally than anything else, and then there's a lot of emotional like testing too. So like, if what I've seen now with this generation compared to ours is that when you can get the best athlete and the best like anything, but then when an instructor comes up to them and is like, hey, you piece of shit, and it's the first time they've ever heard that somebody called them a piece of shit, they're like, what? Like they lose it. So that's what I mean by emotional. And physical is just like, okay, you got 4 mile time runs, 4 2 nautical mile time swims, 4 O course time, and if you fail, then you try again. If you failed again, you're out. So you can only get like one performance. one performance role, and then and I've seen guys who are like mentally strong. They had like a really big heart, but they just couldn't pass the times, you know. So, and the times get, it's like the times get, it's not like, but the times get, it's still the same 4 mile time run, but the times get faster. So you have to get stronger. You have to get faster, even though they just break you down constantly, you know. But it's you know, it's got its challenges, you know. So,
Oh.
and then once you're done with that, then once you're done with buds, then it's like, then you go to it used to be where when I went through, they went to the Army jumps. We would go to the Army jump school out in Fort Benning for 3 weeks. Now we have our own jump school, and so, yeah. Did I answer your question about buds?
Yeah, yeah. So after you completed your buds and your training, so you SEAL Team 5, you know, obviously there's certain things you cannot discuss, but maybe tell us about some of your proudest moments as a SEAL, as well as some of the most challenging moments. I mean, we'll just put it out there. You went in at I would say, a very challenging time because we had, like you said, just came off 9/11. War in Iraq, Afghanistan, Benghazi in there, a lot of stuff going on in there. So maybe tell us what you can about some of the proudest and most challenging times.
You know, I didn't think I was going to stay in for 20 years. I thought I was just going to, you know, my plan was to, you know, serve my country, go be a SEAL, and go to war, and then get out. I didn't know that, hey, you know, when you're done with BUDS, you know, an SQT, SEAL qualification training is SQT. And once you become a SEAL, you owe a SEAL team like 5 years. I didn't know that. I was like, oh shit. I was like, okay, cool. Then I guess I extended 2 extra years. And then I went to and then I'm like, all right, well, I thought that the entire time that I stayed in, and as long as I did, is because, you know, we had 2 decades of war. So then the entire time that I was in, I was fortunate enough to, you know, go to war, train to go to war, or train guys to go to war. That was my 20 years, you know, and you know, after a while, it takes a toll on you know, on your body and on your mind. And I think just being a SEAL and in the teams, I was just, there was no like one moment that I was proud of besides that, except when I saw my daughter being born. I think that was like the proudest moment. But then, I mean, there was like other proud moments I had as a SEAL, but I think being a dad was like, you know, it trumped all that,
Yeah.
you know. But I think it was when I, you know, like, you know, finishing Hell Week I was proud of that. And then you know, passing pool comp, and then getting through San Clemente Island in 3rd phase, and then, you know, making through SQT, getting my SEAL Trident, my pin. I mean, things like that. But then, but the good thing about the teams is they always like, they humble you. Because, you know, my first time, the first day I checked in. So when you check into a SEAL team, you got to get in your dress blues, and you know, I'm like, you know, I just had my Trident with like three ribbons, or, you know. So I walk in there, and I see this crusty ass like chief team guy, and he's like, he introduces himself. He's like, yeah, I'm Tommy, you know, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm Soukhanthone Siphaxay. Shakes my hand, and he goes, we all made it through Hell Week. You didn't do anything special. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, okay. So I asked a couple guys around me, you know, like after like a day of just going, getting signed off. I was like, yeah, who's that dude? They're like, oh yeah, that's Tommy. I won't say his last name, but come to find out, the dude was in Panama, Kosovo, and he was in the invasion. And I'm just like, okay, I realized quick that I wouldn't. It humbled me, and I realized really quick that I really wasn't shit. So I had to prove myself, you know, and it was like that, like we talked about earlier. It was like channeling that anger, you know, and it's not like it's like and I learned that's like one of I think it was like the first day that I learned that, hey, don't get mad, get better. And I was just like constantly trying to strive to get better and using that still anger to and I haven't been able to control it better. So I use that to get better. And yeah, it just
Wow.
So I know you went to Iraq, Afghanistan as well. Where were
yeah.
some of the hot spots you were deployed to?
I did Iraq a couple times, Afghanistan, and then uh, Southern Philippines was, that
Oh,
was
okay.
that too. So, but it wasn't like, but every theater was different, There was a couple other places uh, around the world too. That was some hot spots, but I'd say Afghanistan was probably like the best, one of the best deployments. So.
Yeah, that was rough. Quite a few
But see,
SEALs lost their life.
when I was in, we were winning, so I was out by the time that they left Afghanistan, so I can't complain,
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, well, you know, um, you've served at some, like I said, some of the very toughest times and some of the toughest theaters. You and many SEALs. So our hats are off to all the SEALs and special ops and just the rest of the veterans that served over there as well. Not easy. Um, one of the most difficult things about serving, especially in something like the SEALs, is trying to balance your family life with military because you're gone all the time. And if you're in the SEALs, sometimes you can't even talk about where you're at, right? They don't know
Right,
if you're coming back, your family.
right.
How did you manage the home front? Um,
And you said something like, that you just said it. Some people may not come back, and I was always ready for, like honestly, I didn't expect to live past 35. Um, so it was that expectation management. And so I would always write on my Pelican case because they issued us Pelican case and I lock it up and I'm like, okay, if KIA is killed in action, this goes to Michael, my wife, and Kennedy. So I was like, this is where it goes. But then you guys can just divvy up my gear. I don't care, because then after that, but it was like the little things that I wanted my wife to have, like a lot of the like my watch to a couple of the things that she knew that I took over to on deployment. That's what I wanted them to have, and I talked to some guys and then I had like death letters and things like that. Like, hey, this is and then after deployment and when I got home, I would just burn it, things like that. But I'd say expectation management, and then with managing a family, it was it was the first 2 years was tough because you're just adjusting to it. And then it got to the point where it was like I was coming home to visit, because every duty was different, every job was different. And it was like, having been at five for 5 years, then I had to go teach the West Coast teams land warfare, and then go to team. I went to Team 3 for 2 years. I went to Buds, PTRR for 2 years. I went back to Team 3 for 2 years. Then I went to back to TRADEP for 2 years. Then I went to Team 1 for 2 years. Then Sniper School as an instructor for 2 years. Then I finished up at Great Lakes where I started at Buds Prep for 2 years, and then that was my 20-year retirement. But the I think it was 18 straight years of like really sea duty or being gone all the time. That wasn't too bad. The roughest was when my last 2 years when I was home and we had to adjust and get to know each other again. That's, I think, making the adjustments, you know.
Yeah, I think that's something that's often overlooked because you get in this groove, right? And being in the military, and whether it's that you're stationed back home or, when people get out, right? Tell us, I mean, how do you go from being a SEAL, right? That you're up here and then you're like one of us back in civilian
Yeah.
life, you know?
Yeah. That was it was tough. I'd say the year that I after retirement, it was like um I'd been prepping for it for I'd say about 4 years before I retired. So I started prepping for it. And um and then when it finally was over, it was tough because everything that I had done since fifth grade to the time so I was like 24 when I actually went in, everything I did for whether it was school, whether it was wrestling practice, football practice, track practice, I was like, okay, this is I got to bust my ass, I got to like put out and work hard because this is just getting me stronger, faster, getting me ready for buzz. So I had that mentality every time I went to kung fu practice. It was like it was that mentality of trying to get better and just being competitive. And then one day it was just over. I think that was probably the toughest is when it was over. And I still was kind of like, it felt like I was still in kind of denial. And I went into a depression. It's for me, it was hard for me to say that, I went into depression. I haven't been a team guy. You're not supposed to have feelings, right? But yeah, I was depressed and I just for weeks I would just stare at the TV. I mean, I was in a routine where I was, my daughter was still my priority. I was like, all right, I'm taking her to school. Then I'd go work out for a couple hours and I'd come back and just stare at the TV. And I was sitting in the same spot doing the same thing that when my wife left for work, she'd come home and she's just like, oh, what did you do today? And I was like, sitting in front of the TV, just looking at it. Sometimes the TV was on, sometimes the TV was off. And it was just, I you know, just didn't really do anything. And then one day she's like, go get a job. I'm like, what? Like I just had surgery like in my neck. I had to get like a lipoma, like a thick ass like lipoma out of my neck. So they cut it, took it, and the doctor's like, hey, no jujitsu, no working out for 5 weeks, no this and that. I'm like, okay, and I was like, that's easy. I can do that. And then that's when my wife was like, go get a job. So I talked to my daughter. I was like, hey, if I so you want to move back to California? Because oh, so Great Lakes, I'd said that the Butts Prep was in Great Lakes, so we moved. So my last 2 years, we moved back to the Midwest to see if we were going to try to retire out there because being closer to Iowa. And then 2 weeks after we moved in October, it snowed. So I was like, fuck this place. This is why I spent so many years getting out of this place. So I talked to my daughter because she was born and raised in San Diego from the time she was born to 13. She's 16 now, but so for the last 3 years, she's been in Wisconsin. So I was like, hey, let's go back to San Diego. She's like, all right. And then my wife's like, we're going to stay here till you know, till she graduates, and then we'll move back out there with you. I was like, all right. And then when my wife told me to go get a job, I started applying for all these federal agencies, and I aged out on a couple, and then I applied for a couple of like police departments and sheriff's departments, and I got one agency that was like, yeah, we'll work with you. I was like, okay, cool. So I came out, had the interview process in like exactly a year ago, and then I came home and I was like, hey, I think I got a good shot at getting this job. I just got to go back, do a one more interview, lieutenant's interview. Came out in July for the lieutenant's interview, and they're like, "Yep, you're hired." And it was weird, man. Like I snapped out of my that depression and grogginess, And I was like, shit, I got a purpose again. Started working out, getting ready. And then I came back out here and they're like, hey, you got to be back out here in San Diego by August. Orientation's on August 17th. And then the academy starts on the 29th. I'm like, all right. Flew back home, packed all my stuff. I was out here by the 12th, showed up to the orientation, and then started the academy, the police academy. And then I just graduated. So like 2 weeks ago. So
Oh, yeah, congratulations.
Man, congratulations. Hey, so I mean, talking about the depression, right? We hear that a lot about like veterans, right? Coming back home and adjusting to civilization, right? And a lot of, you hear a lot of guys, they don't snap out of it, So yeah, I was gonna ask you what you thought, like, got you through it all. But yeah, man, it's kind of, you hear so many stories about, veterans coming back and not adapting, right? And
yeah, so here's the thing, man. Like I was older when I went in. So by the time I was, I came in 24. By the time I was done with, my A school, buds, SQT, and a full workup, I went to Iraq. My first deployment was to a war zone, and I showed up at like 28. And then I'd see these young guys that are like 18 years old, 19, 20 years old, no like life experience.
Yeah,
and they're in a war zone, bro, and it's stressful. Then they go home and they do, and it's like they try to adjust, and it's hard. So when I went there, it was like, okay, cool. I was older. I had more life experience. But another thing too, man, like I never did anything that I would regret. It was like, for example, I stopped a kid in Afghanistan. So I was a breacher, I was a sniper, I was a bunch of other stuff, and I went out and I supported the conventional guys that helped us. That they would do convoys, but they kept on getting hit on this spot, and I was like, hey, you know what? I was like, here are my quals. I'm a sniper and breacher. I'm an RSO, range safety officer. I can help you guys run range. I can do. They're like, well, we're short a sniper. I'm like, okay, I'll go. And they're like, you serious? Like, not even, Green Berets will help us. I'm like, well, I'm not special forces, So love those guys. I mean, I got a lot of buddies that are special forces, Green Berets. But I told this kid from the 10th Mountain, I was like, yeah, man, like, you guys are American. I'm American. Well, I'll help you guys. So I would go work, when I was in Afghanistan, I would work at night managing a battle space. I can't say where. And then during the day, I would go provide sniper overwatch from 8 in the morning, 8 at night. And I'd go back to work from 8 at night in the morning. So I'd do that like once a week. But my main job was to manage this, battle space and support and whatever, and support a lot of the other guys that are out in the field. So I did that. And one time this young kid was like, we inserted, and then we set up a hide. We knew the call for prayer was going to come up, which it did. And then I just, I see these three guys with pitchforks and shovels, and they're coming in, and we're hidden by some brushes and some trees, and I hear this click, and I grabbed this young kid. I was like, hey, just calm down. And they got on their knees. The three guys got on their knees and started praying. Once the prayer was over, they got up and they walked away. So this young kid comes up and he's like, a couple hours later, he asked me why, like, I stopped him. And I explained, I was like, hey, like, you guys, he goes, but you're a SEAL. I go, dude, we're professional, man. SEALs we're killers, but we're not murderers. I was like, you kill somebody, that's something you got to live with the rest of your life. That's, that's somebody's dad, that's somebody's brother, that's something. So, and I get it. This kid was infantry. He just wanted to get out and get some, like, that's all how he was trained. But, you know, by me stopping him, I hope, because I haven't seen him since, like 2014. I hope that help him think things through, because the kid went from, just graduated high school, went to boot camp, went to AIT, which is advanced training for their infantry guys, and then less than a year, man, he's in Afghanistan. He's in a war zone, and how do you do that? I mean, like I was in my late 30s, and this kid was just 20 years younger than me in a war zone. So then when he comes home, it's like, I don't know what else he did when he was out there, and I can't speak for him. I can only speak for myself. So that's what I mean, like, by me not doing anything that I regretted. Didn't do anything illegal. I just, because when we go in the country, we're always briefing the ROEs, like rules of engagement. So if I did what I needed to do, I didn't have any regrets, and I could, like, honestly look at myself in the mirror and be like, hey, I'm good. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a big part of the mental battles that some veterans have after, is they feel, remorse for some things they did. It's war, right? I mean,
yes,
it's war. Things happen. It's rough. So
it is, and, there's some things that I did that was like, that I could have done better, but then again, you're your worst critic. You're
yeah,
always going to be hard on yourself.
yeah. Well, so, there's a lot of people striving to be SEALs, or other, special forces. What advice would you have for a young person listening to this, thinking about going on this journey?
Well, there's a lot of advice. I would say, education. Be willing to learn, because you're never too, like, you're never done learning. Because buds is, it's 90% mental and 10% physical. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of physical stuff, but it really is, and and other things like education, like, learn to be good at, math, science, all the nerdy shit. you know my biggest regret when I was going through buds in second and third phase, was skipping school. I had a lot of freedom when I was in high school, so I would skip school, and I would just, like, thinking it was cool to go hang out with my buddies. And then we get in second phase, and it's like, oh shit, like, dive medicine. You're talking about Charles Law, Boyle's Law, so all the laws that pertain to, math and science. Get to third phase, now you're learning about demo, and you're like, oh shit, now you're calculating. I went to free fall jump master and static line jump master, and it was all math and science, because what happens up in, uh, like 20,000 feet is different from 18,000 feet to 16, and then, when you can tell the guys during the brief, when you can tell them when they can pull the parachute and when they can't, and then where they're landing, which way to go, it's just like, it's all math and science. And then having been a sniper since '05, and then been an instructor, it's like all math and science, so it's like, it's crazy. Just be a good student.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people overlook that, for sure. Think it's all about jumping out of planes and, diving and whatever, but
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Tron, this was a great interview. Co, you got anything else here, Tron?
No, man. This is yeah, like you said, it's a great interview. Thank you for, sharing as much as you can, right? I mean, this is something like, not too many people in our community, like the Lao American community, or even the Southeast Asian community, really, talk about like, enlisting in the SEALs. Like like John said, and I think you're probably you're the only one that we know of, right? And man, it's not easy, but definitely, like you said, man, how it's 90% mental, but it's still physical. But yeah, that's the mental toughness is again that's so important. And it's like, like we hear, like a lot of guys come back, right, and they can't adjust. So there's another challenge, man. So it's always like, you never stop learning. I think, once you stop learning, that's when you really, that's when the growth as a human being stops. So
yeah. I would recommend like guys that veterans or anybody that retires from a profession that they love, like like anything, everything has an ending. And my time as a team guy, as a SEAL was done, and just having that finding that purpose again, because we're men, we have to have a purpose, we have to stay busy, because what I've learned since I was at the academy, it was like, this line of work, it's really, really similar to the guys in the military. You hear of guys that were like that retire from the force, and within 3 weeks, guys have a heart attack, or within less than or 3 months or 3 years, it's like they lost that sense of purpose, and they die at an early age. So I mean, so you got to take care of yourself, mentally, physically, emotionally, and whatever it is, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar for you. So as an elite athlete, right, you were working
That
out
was
to
hard.
go to a competition, and then now you're just working out in the gym and probably going right after, right? Well, why?
Well, I mean, I'm open about me and how I suffer from depression, right, when it was over, because like, like Tron, you said, I lost my purpose, man. I'm like, what am I gonna do now? I excelled at this, and now like I'm normal, and not that it's a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with being normal, right? But it's like,
Right.
I had no purpose, man. So it was hard for me for a while as well.
Yeah, I mean, find that purpose. Like whether it's coaching is great. You see a lot of guys. I mean, I learned so much from my coaches. I wouldn't be where I am today without my coaches and my kung fu teacher. And I stay in contact with those guys. I still keep in contact with my mentors that were in the teams. And now I started a new journey, and everybody here, dude, I'm with guys that are like old enough to be my kid, So, and then it seemed like, I'd been mentored so much that I was mentoring a lot of these young guys in my police academy, So, I'm like, okay. And a lot of guys listen. And the ones that didn't, I was just like, okay, cool. Don't have to listen.
So I've got to ask, because Co and I are huge David Goggins fans. Did you ever serve with him? Did you ever meet him?
Yeah. So Goggins was in Bravo platoon, and I was in Echo. So in a SEAL team, so you have like a SEAL team, right? And then you're split up into platoons. So our platoons are like 16 to 21 man platoons, and really depends on what platoon and what they're doing. So, and I really can't get into in depth in what how platoons, but yeah, we were at 5 together. We were just in different platoons, and then he did his 5 years, and I owed another platoon, so I came back from deployment, and I had to redo another platoon, and then when he was done with TRADET, I took over his spot as a instructor.
Oh,
so did you guys ever cross paths? Like, did you ever meet the guy or anything?
Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, we know each other.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you
want to run 100 miles in the have desert heat or anything?
For me, so because being 5'5", 5'6", about 180 pounds, I'm really not built for running. So running's for the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, Well, good. Well, yeah, Tron, we appreciate you coming on, telling your story, being open about it, telling the good, the bad, the challenging and all that. So thanks so much, folks. We'd appreciate.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We'd appreciate if you'd give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We could use a few more of those. Tell your friends about the show, and thanks so much, everybody.
All right.
The C4 podcast is brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com, celebrating the first, inspiring the next.